I promise I wouldn't gush.
Like having one stance for the entire presentation.
Oh,
There you go. Stance of motion, a little bend in the knees, you'll be good.
Okay, guys, I think we're ready to go, yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes.
2 seconds, yes.
You bet.
Thank you for your help.
All right. Well, I took a peek at your schedule in preparation for this. It looks like you guys had an awesome lineup on, so I hope you're all getting something great out of it. I think you're wrapping up tomorrow morning, right? Just evening tomorrow morning to finish on guard of the gods. Yeah, okay. I'm Brad Gulla. I am my doctorate in chiropractic. I've been in practice for, just over 19 years now in Colorado Springs. And the bulk of what I've been doing is functional neurology. I'll talk to you a little bit more about what that means. In the past 9 years now, we've really been focused on concussion management specifically. So I'm going to talk to you really from that angle. I'm going to hope to really give you some data and then turn it back over to you guys to figure out where your concerns about concussion are, if you have them. And I'm hoping you do at this point, and make sure that we can really get some real life things for you guys to deal with at home and to consider on this. So we're going to talk about recognition, recovery, and return to play, but I'm going to go whichever direction the common thread leads us, okay? So please feel free to join in, point me in the right direction. The reason I'm here is because concussion is significant. It's an epidemic at this point. I really think we're probably seeing a greater incidence of concussions overall, but I think the biggest thing that's changed in the United States is concussion recognition and awareness, where we understand that they're happening, and we've done studies to look at short-term and long-term consequences of concussion. We're going to talk about both of those today. So really, I'm hoping to get message out about awareness about concussion, make sure that you at least understand what you need to be looking for, what the state-of-the-art calls are now on how we manage a concussion case and how you should be concerned about that. We were just talking at the back, and if you don't mind, I'll share. We were talking about this collection of 33 different countries that had coaches that showed up, and the question was raised, how many of you guys were concerned about concussion? And it was zero. It's not even on the radar screen, apparently, other than in the United States, from that example. So, but it is huge here. We're seeing more and more about this. We're seeing more and more research. We're seeing more and more media exposure. And we're seeing more and more lawsuits based upon players being put back into play before they're actually cleared to go back into play. The reason for the lawsuits is because of a condition that's known as second impact syndrome. And it means that we got put back into the game before the first concussion cleared, and now I got another concussion. The result is death. All right? We just had another one, last year in Colorado. There's been several around the state. Massive lawsuits associated with these, and we won't see that go away. That's only going to become more problematic in the future. So that's really why we're doing this today. As I said, 19 years in practice. I do a lot of teaching on concussion. In my clinic, we're totally focused on that right now. My staff is trained in concussion management. If we get a case in that's not concussed, they don't even know what to do with them. So we're seeing hundreds of these per year at this point. And by and large, I would say we're successful with some 98% of our cases that we see market recovery. Now, yes, we got 1 to 2% that we have some permanent injury with that we don't resolve, and that's just the nature of the beast. But we're very successful with the plan that we've created. So I want to share some of that with you guys as well. Right now, I've got a neuropsych and an MD that are working in my office with me to help us manage these cases and make good calls. All right, so concussion. It is an impact to the body or the head. It does not have to be the head, and this is really important to understand, particularly I think in your sport, that we don't have to hit the head. If I have a blow to my body that causes an impulse to be delivered to my head that moves the brain inside the skull, that is concussion. Okay? So concussion basically is the brain bouncing off of the inside of the skull and producing not what we call structural lesions in most cases. So in other words, a structural lesion means I've damaged architecture. I've changed the way that neural pathways should be going. I've damaged a neuron. That doesn't happen in the average concussion case, at least on the level that we look at. Okay, I promise you, if we get microscopic enough, yes, we see structural damage. By and large, concussion is considered to be a functional injury or functional lesion. Okay, and so what that means is we haven't changed architecture. We've changed the physiology of the brain. We changed the ability for the brain to use its resources and respond to stimulus in an appropriate way so that we have good output. For the most part, that's what my job is assessing that and coming up with a way that we can treat the problems that we find with the brain on that aspect. All right, some basics. No head contact is required. Okay, most concussions do have head contact, but it is not required. I can have a blow anywhere else to my body, and if it's big enough, I can have a concussive event. 90% will not lose consciousness. You should not expect to see your athlete on the mat not moving. Okay, that has nothing to do with this concussion. Only 10% will lose consciousness. Okay, they go to the ER after you suspect concussion. The ER is going to run a CT on them, right? They may run an MRI, probably a CT. Guess what? It's not going to show concussion. All right, CT and MRI without enhancement, without doing some imaginative stuff to the software, does not show concussive injury. Why? Because it's not structural. There's nothing torn, right? CT and MRI are designed to pick up structural lesions in the brain. They won't see concussion. So that report you get back from the ER that says a normal CT study has nothing to do with the diagnosis of concussion. Okay. Let's see, 80% will recover in 7 to 10 days. The Zurich consensus is really probably considered to be the most well-rounded body of data that's been put together on concussion recognition and concussion management to some degree. They've had their third international conference now, and in that, the experts that came around from the world, and by the way, guys, I'm more than happy to give this to you in an electronic format. You can just email this out, okay? I figured rather than handouts, I would do that, so just remind me, and I'll email it to you before I leave here today, okay? Oh, sweet, you got it right there, good, okay. Technologically challenged. All right, I should have thought of that. The Zurich consensus says 80% of the concussions that are sustained will resolve spontaneously in 7 to 10 days if we do nothing about it. And that's true, okay? We're really looking for the ones that we go beyond the 10-day mark and we're still symptomatic to some degree. Something has changed to take us away from norm. Okay, now I'm going to vary a little bit. Do you guys have an idea of what's the best way for us to know whether a child has been moved from their norm? How do we know that? Baseline testing. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. It's the only way. Otherwise, here's what we got to do. We run through the same test, but we got to compare that to norms now based upon sex, age groups, other factors that we may vary into that. And it's nowhere as close as the data that we get from actually testing the child and looking at their performance abilities before we have a suspected concussion. So while it's not mandatory at this point, guys, it's coming, all right? You are going to see changes that will mandate concussion baseline testing before they're allowed to play competitive, at least concussion sports. It's already started stuff, yeah, absolutely. What state are you in? Alabama, okay. Same. South Carolina.
So we start Tuesday, right?
Okay. Well, and so again, I expect over the next 2 to 3 years it'll be global. It's just going to go that way. There won't be an option on it. So, you know, again, start to get yourself warmed up for that idea. If you're not already there, do a little research, dig into that. It's coming. It's good. Okay. You know, again, there's two things. The baseline testing gives us the opportunity to diagnose concussion. It also helps us to establish return to play decisions, okay? So knowing when they truly come out of the woods and they're safe to go back into competitive play. So we use it for both of those purposes. All right, so let's talk about recognition. Now, FYI, I've got a little practicum built into this, so you guys are going to actually do a little bit of work today, okay? In a group this size, we're going to see dysfunction. Now, let me ask before we get there, does anyone have a problem with me using you as an example if we see something that's good for learning? For example, if I see some interesting eye movements or if you can't balance quite like I want you to. Does anyone have a problem with me picking on you if that's the case? Good, I'm going to take that as a consent. Then what we're going to do, we're going to pair up and I'm going to actually have you guys look. In a group of this size, I can pretty well promise you we're going to have some interesting things so you can actually see some real-time dysfunction. Okay? And if not, then I'm going to be impressed with one of the more healthy groups of 50 that I've seen in a long time. Okay? All right. Yeah. Okay, so recognition. Here's what we're looking at, guys. How do you make the call that you want to pull a player out of play to evaluate them for concussion? How do you know this? Well, the first is going to be mechanism of injury. All right? Did they take a hit? Did they take a fall? Is there some mechanism that you would expect that the brain could have been rattled inside of the skull? Okay? You've all seen it. I know you've all seen kids that you look at in person, not on TV, that you look at and go, oh my God, yeah, that could be good, right? Mechanism of injury is huge. Remember, doesn't have to be hit. Anywhere in the body can count. Loss of consciousness, unresponsiveness. Remember, only 10% will wind up at this point, okay? But talk to me about alterations in consciousness. What does that mean if my consciousness is altered? All right? I'm not unconscious, it's just not where I was before. What does that look like? Okay. That blank stare look, right? Absolutely, yeah. And just throw it out. Yeah.
When we had lashes, we have a certain routine our kids do every time before the match starts or at the end of every match. Kid walks off the match, don't even think about the routine, just in the left field.
Okay.
You walk up, and we had 2 or 3 like that, and 2 out of 3 were concussions.
All right, very good. So just lost
One
their
of them
normal
fell hard
protocol,
on the
lost
flat.
their routine. All right.
No control of emotions sometimes.
Oh, that's a huge symptom in concussion, absolutely. And that's, believe it or not, one that's not picked on, it's not listed very often, but it's huge, absolutely. How many, I don't even need to ask, how many in here have had a concussion? That's about what I figured, okay. To the point, is anyone in here who's had a concussion not been so symptomatic that you knew, I mean, things were wrong, right? You struggled for a period of time? All right, so one of the common things, my last concussion, gosh, and unfortunately I've had several. The only advantage with me is that I've had really good treatment for my concussions as I get them. However, the last one cost me 2 permanent deficits. So there's 2 brain functions that I lost that I will never get back. I got a sense of humor change, and I've got a timeline challenge. Did it happen 3 months ago, 3 years ago? I don't know. Let me look at my day timer. That's what it's for, right? So that's a big challenge for me. The emotional piece, I remember this so vividly from now. I think it was probably 8 years ago or so. But I mean, literally crying because I dropped a pencil on the ground. I mean, that's significant, right? So it's really common to see that. That's not going to necessarily be tied into consciousness, though, all right? What are we talking about? If we don't lose consciousness, if I'm not flat out and still and unresponsive, how can I still make a call about concussion based upon consciousness? So what are we looking for? Yes, the blank stare, inability to respond to me, right?
Dilation.
Yeah, of course. And again, vomiting potentially. Okay. Now, again, we're going to get into some of those symptoms. Vomiting is not a huge one with concussion, but it does happen. And of course, it's going to be repetitive vomiting that we're going to be concerned about. Okay. We'll get back to this. I'll pick it back up. Let's see, prior concussions. Okay. So when we're looking at recognition, saying, God, John just took a pretty big hit. He had 3 concussions last year. Does that factor into whether I pull him out of the game? Yeah, of course it does. Even one other concussion would factor into whether I would pull a kid out for an evaluation. And we're going to talk about sideline evaluation and give you some options on that as well. My goal, guys, is for you guys to be relatively comfortable making a call by the time we get through with this clinic. Making a call as to whether you need to take someone out of the game to assess them on the sideline. That's essentially my goal for today. Okay, so I'm going to tailor that according to your goals aside from that. And then, of course, seizure. If you see someone lying on the ground seizing in tremors, then that's another solid indication that we've had a TBI. All right, so our sideline evaluations. If we pull that kid off, and we're not through with recognition, guys. We've got a series of slides here on this. If we pull someone out, so we saw the mechanism of injury and said, gosh, that looks like that could have been problematic. We're going to pull them out now and do an assessment on the sideline to make a call about whether they're done or whether they can go back into the game. Okay? Now, most of your states, guys, are going to require that once that call has been made, if you pull someone out and you suspect a concussion based upon that evaluation, they cannot go back into the game. Most states are going to enforce that by law. Okay? I can promise you that the child's attorney will enforce that by law. Okay? So once they're pulled out, if you suspect even reasonably that they're concussed, they should not go back into competition that day until they are cleared. All right? Probably the 3, I know Carly brought up the King Devic, and I think you guys have used the King Devic at some point. I think the problem was you
Just
didn't.
got some information about it.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether or not that's something we're willing to do.
let me show you a couple of examples. So here's the key to it. And essentially what this is spatial visual memory testing. Essentially what's going to happen is we're going to have the athlete, and again, this should be done before the season starts, okay, so that we get a baseline. All of these are based upon that. But essentially we're just going to read the string of numbers across, drop down, read the string of numbers across, drop down, and continue that process. This is a timed exercise, okay? So there's going to be a baseline that you're going to have been able to read through these cards in a certain amount of time, and that's what we're going to compare to if we suspect a concussion. Now the good news is that on the sideline, this takes only a couple of minutes to administer. You have a pretty good idea about what's going on. Why do you suppose this test would be sensitive to concussion? Now, before I even go there, understand, this is pretty easy. The next card, all of a sudden we've lost the lines. Now we've lost the lines and the numbers are crunched down into a tighter box, okay? So it gets progressively more difficult as you work through these cards. Talk to me, why would this pick up on concussion? Why would it be sensitive to that?
Spatial orientation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tracking.
Talk about, yes, tracking. Yeah, so one of the, I would say most common findings that I see in concussed patients is the ability to perform saccadic eye movements, meaning I'm changing my eye from one target to another. Okay? The eyes really only do 3 different motions. They do smooth pursuit, which is commonly effective with concussions, well, almost always. I do saccades, my ability to look from one target to the other, but I really don't recognize anything in between. So somebody yells, "Hey Brad," I look over, I didn't catch anything here to here, I went boom, and I saccaded onto them. Extreme difficulties with concussion. And the really only other eye, most of the eyes do is convergence, and that's our ability to bring those eyes together to converge on the target. So this is difficult because it requires saccadic eye movement. I've got to be able to move those eyes from one number to the other, come down, catch the other line, and follow those numbers across. Most concussions are going to show up on this test. I think it's reasonable. Yes, sir.
So you do that during the competition, so the second football guy, got hit hard, you bring him over, and you do that test on the sideline. But when you run the baseline for this, do you do that during the practice, let's say? You gotta know how tired they are. I mean, a tough practice.
Generally speaking, no. Okay, generally speaking, this would be done at rest, just a normal evaluation where there's no pressure put on you from a physical or cognitive standpoint.
So have you ever thought about trying that just to see what the difference would be?
I love it. Yeah, personally, I think the more data we have, the better. So I like having both. Okay? I can think of more ways to test someone and then run them through this as well.
I'd be curious to see.
Oh, I think it's great thinking. So, look, the more data we have, so in other words, he can do this in 34 seconds at rest with no stress, but we have him hit the treadmill for 5 minutes and then have him do some memorization and now come back and try this and it takes him 42 seconds, right? That's great data. So I like it. Now, that's not where things are from an assessment standpoint at this point. It's simply doing the baseline and then once we suspect an injury, we rerun the test. Yes?
I work with USA Football as a player safety coach.
Yes.
And we do the King-Devick test.
Yeah.
But we do exactly what you're talking about. Our baseline is actually done at a practice on the sideline during preseason before the kids actually hit each other. And so we time them on the sideline, and then that's our baseline. And so in the game, if a child is concussed, we pull him off the sideline, have him read the same thing, compare the times. And if they're not within the acceptable range, that kid doesn't go back on the field until they're cleared. So that's actually what's happening, what USA Football is doing nationwide. And the King-Devick is the test that they're actually pushing as an organization.
And King-Devick, they partnered with Impact to some degree so that they're trying to combine, the cognitive aspect of the impact with the visual spatial memory of King-Devick. So we're trying to combine and get a more dynamic test, which I am going to talk to you about. Yes, sir.
What's the acceptable
Boy, there's a standard on this. Do you guys use the standard numbers, or is your athletic team coordinate? Because that's what happens.
Well, what ended up happening was when you're sitting in a room and you're all sorts of relaxed, you can read that really, really quickly.
Absolutely.
What we found is that the difference between the baseline that was from a relaxed state to the baseline on the field was about 8 seconds different. And it was approximately 7 to 10 seconds between if a kid took a knock to the head. So what we were looking at is 10 seconds in the difference.
So yeah, there are numbers that they have come up with. I'm going to tell you, I don't see that universally appreciated. But I love that approach. I mean, they've set up a protocol, and that's all this is, guys. This is not the gold standard. I mean, neither is the impact. It's a combination of things. So what our goal is to come up with a system that doesn't require thought. It doesn't change, that we can do a uniform assessment, okay? So I guess I would argue that whether we're talking about an 8-second difference, a 10 or a 12-second difference, we got to have a number that we can analyze. So I personally think 10 seconds is great. Okay, so easy to administer. This comes in a little sheet. You can easily do this on the sideline. It's gaining more and more popularity as they partner with Impact. Let's talk a little bit about the Impact. Again, spatial, visual memory, short-term memory, recall. We're going to test a number of different things. The challenge is this, guys. The Impact test is used in a way that it should not be used according to the creator. Dr. Level said the Impact should not be used as a standalone tool for concussion diagnosis, and particularly return to play.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
There's just a lot of side conversations going on. Dr. Bill's been very generous with his time. I'd just like to give him the full attention while we can. Thank you very much. Would you mention Dr. Level? Start at Dr. Level.
Yeah, so again, Dr. Level, who created the Impact test, essentially said when he created it, should not be used as a standalone tool for return to play, but that's exactly what we're seeing it used for. And why? It's cheap. Okay? Schools are very concerned about the cost associated with this. It's $10 for the first assessment and $20 for reassessments. Okay? So students can manage that, parents can manage it, the organizations who pay for it can manage it. Let me give you the other side of the spectrum. When I do a concussion baseline test, we're doing cognitive stuff. We're doing spatial orientation. However, what we're doing is taking into a really elaborate process of testing all the way from a screening neuro exam, a comprehensive health history, a comprehensive concussion history. We put them on the force plate. It's a computerized posturography that measures balance potential and equilibrium. It helps us determine whether vision is included in the balance and equilibrium problem. We take them through, in my office we use the SCAT-3. I feel that it gives us a little more dynamic range on some of the things we see with concussion, and we're going to look at that today as well. We check them for post-traumatic vision changes, which are very common and very commonly overlooked. Gosh, guys, I am one of the few doctors in town that I bring this up to that understand or even heard of what a visual midline shift syndrome is. It's in about 70% of the concussions that I treat, and we don't get anywhere until we recognize and deal with that problem. So we do a screening for that to make sure if it needs to be addressed, we've got to get that under control right off the bat. So we're going to look at all of that as a comprehensive picture about their performance level in all those different areas. The impact, if this is a comprehensive baseline test, the impact is that much of it. Okay? So I don't think it's a sufficient standalone tool, even for, in my opinion, that's the way most of the organizations use it. I guess I'll say that. It's an important piece, and yes, it can be included in any number of different assessments that you do to gain more information. I think it's valuable from that standpoint. All right, but you're going to see that this is going to be used, gosh, I'm going to say 90% of the organizations are based upon impact right now. We'll take a look at the SCAT-3. Now, I've got several different pieces of this. I'm not going to go through it, but I want to give you a good idea about why I like this piece. Now, here's the difference. The King Devic, about 2 minutes on the field. The SCAT is going to take you about 15 minutes or so to complete, and that's if you're proficient at it. Okay. The reason I like it, Glasgow Coma Scale, we're generally not going to have a problem with concussions on that. That's a consciousness scale, essentially. The MADIC scores. Okay, this is the basic thing. Where are we playing? Are you ahead? Who'd you play last week? Did you win that game? You guys are familiar with those questions, yes? Okay. All right. Very good. So, I'm sorry. One other thing I like about the SCAT-3. Now, understand this is a product of the Zurich consensus. They just changed this and they updated it to the SCAT-3 from the SCAT-2 in their 2012 symposium. So this has been revised 3 different times, and again, it's generally regarded as one of the more proficient silent evaluation tools. So that's why we use this stuff. Let's see. Boy, I thought I was going somewhere with that. Symptom evaluation. Oh, I was going somewhere with that. Sorry about that. Even on the MADIC scores, the reason I like this is because, again, this is a metric tool. We actually get a score, numeric value for each of these that we can come back in and compare to very simply. There's a chart that we use to basically accumulate the scores on this, and it makes it really, really quick and easy to compare pre and post data. Okay, so we go through the symptom evaluation. We're going to look at that a little bit more later. But the cognitive assessment, which is the SAC, this is going to test orientation, immediate memory, concentration, and then later on delayed recall. Surprisingly to the athlete, about 5 minutes later they're going to be asked, hey, you remember that that list of 5 words I asked you about 5 minutes ago, I want you to tell me how many of those you can remember now. So we're getting all of those aspects. Neck examination, balanced examination, coordination exam, and then there's that SAC delayed recall. We also get a point system associated with symptoms so that we can grade that on a 0 to 6 scale. We have a good idea about how significant their symptom set is associated with their injury.
How long does that portion take to complete?
My staff completes that in about 15 minutes.
Okay, so
They do it all day long, so they're pretty good at it.
no, that's not going to be my question. So, I guess, what are this is all great for football and those sports, but I guess my concern is, what is it that for wrestling that we can do that's going to be proficient and give us something that, because we only get a short period of time.
How long?
2 minutes.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to go through some very practical, physical things that you guys are going to look at, okay? It's going to make sense to you.
Okay.
In addition, like I said, my opinion would be probably the King Devics. You're going to be your best tool. Again, it's really quick. It requires almost 0 interpretation. It's a stopwatch and read, okay? So that's going to probably be one of your valuable tools. This is great, but again, you need 15, 20 minutes to be able to make this happen, reasonably so, to be confident with it. I'm going to give you some shortcuts, okay? Do you have to go through the whole damn SCAT 3 to make that call? No. If you see any aspect of that you're not happy with, you're done. You don't have to complete it. I go to step 1 and I have a problem and they're out. So it could be a 10-second evaluation, okay? It's only going to be, if it's a mild injury, it's borderline. You may have to push your way through all of it. Generally speaking, we don't get past the history and we know that they're concussed, okay? I mean, they can't communicate with us on that level, so. Okay. We're continuing on, again, recognition. So we're going to get into some of the good stuff. Screening, neurologic assessment. All right. Visible signs of concussion. We're going to look at short-term memory and cognition, verbal communication, eye movements, balance, and then we're going to look at that symptom set in a little more detail. Visible cues of suspected concussion, loss of motion or unresponsiveness, again, only in 10%, but if they're on the ground not moving, guys, you don't question it. They're concussed until proven otherwise. Okay? They have a cervical spine injury until proven otherwise if they're not moving on the ground, right? From a first aid standpoint, yes? Okay, so we would treat them as though they had a broken neck and a damaged brain until proven otherwise if they're not moving on the ground. Let's see, line motionists are slow to get up, makes sense. Unsteady on feet, balance problems, or incoordination. That's normally pretty obvious immediately after. I'm sorry, is there anyone in here who's not seen a player who's concussed that you looked at him and you could tell? Is there anyone who's not had that experience? Okay, so all of you have seen someone you think so. If you see any, if you have anything to add to this, please do it. Question me on this list because I want to make sure it looks good on all of them. Grabbing or clutching to the head. Generally speaking, you're going to have head pain with a concussion. Not every time, but generally. Again, dazed or blank, vacant look. Confusion, not aware of plays or events. Okay, so they have lost time, they've lost track. So those are the visible cues that we're looking for. Short-term memory and cognition. Again, the Maddox questions. Where are you? Are you winning? What hat is this? Or I'm sorry, it doesn't apply to your sports side. Forgive me. Again, talk to me about events last week. Did you win, lose? What's the score? Any of those things to get an idea about their orientation into present time and short-term memory is what we're looking for on this. Specific questions from recent past, so they don't have to be related to Maddox stuff. If you know the kid personally, ask him things, all right? Ask him about his test scores last week, what happened in practice last week, things about his parents if you know. What you're looking for, guys, is evidence that there's been a change in cognition. Okay, there's been a change in consciousness or cognition. Anything that gives you that evidence should be used for that purpose. Count backwards from 100 by threes. A beautiful tool, all right? I can promise you, an acute concussion is going to struggle with this. Yes, sir?
What are your thoughts on diagnosing kids that exhibit cognitive deficits on a daily basis? For example, the attention deficit disorder kids.
Yes.
At 3 o'clock, their meds are worn off.
Yeah.
By 7 o'clock at match time, they can't remember their name for 10 seconds. Or English as second language students that have difficulty with the language, and you're trying to ask them questions, and even on a normal day, they couldn't hardly have a conversation with somebody that they don't know, or You know what I'm saying? How do you deal with those?
These are
Is that
big
just
challenges,
personal?
Coach. These are big challenges, okay? And this is why we're struggling with some of these areas, because we have those communication challenges. Not only that, but we got kids that the last thing that they want to do is admit that they were concussed. All right? So, and this is a very real phenomenon. So it's difficult. We got to do the best we can. Okay? Come up with a preset routine so that you're not having to come up with it on the spot, particularly communication challenges. Comorbidity is always a huge problem. If we've got kids that have concussion and 1, 2, 3 or other different things that they're dealing with, such as ADHD, of course it complicates their picture. It's horrible. I mean, guys, let's look at the symptom list from an ADHD child and look at the symptom list from a concussed child. They're a little bit different, but I promise you, there's a lot of things that would go both ways on that list. It's difficult. The bottom line is this. If you can't prove that they're not concussed, you have to assume that they are. Okay, so I mean, if it comes down to that, and you can't make that communication, if you've got any sign, even if it's only the mechanism of injury, you're going to have to make that call until proven otherwise.
That's the difficulty that we deal with, because 9 times out of 10, we're in a gym somewhere with an athletic trainer or a doctor that doesn't know our kid. It's somebody else's team doctor, it's somebody else's trainer, even our own trainers. A lot of us don't have trainers assigned to our schools. They're assigned to a district and they come by.
Gotcha. Yes.
You know, so it's very difficult to get. You're lucky if you've got a medical
Somebody
personnel
like
that has a relationship with your kids ahead of time. You're lucky if you have that situation.
You know, Coach, the only thing I know is that you're going to become the valuable resource. Though. I mean, you do know that. Okay, so you're going to probably be the most valuable tool to make the call as to whether there was a change in that kid's consciousness, your personality, their ability to communicate with you, as limited as it may be. At least you know what it was. So you're going to probably be the go-to on that. All right? I think it's an important call. And listen, this is a big, big issue. I understand that this is brought up commonly with me. There's not a simple solution for it. There really is not. Short of having a multilingual training staff, having all these things that we love to have with big budgets, it's just not going to happen. Yes, sir.
We're running into some trouble in Georgia in the combative athletics period, so mostly football and wrestling, where if a child is suspected of a concussion in wrestling, you have a minute and a half of injury time.
Okay.
And so you don't even have time to administer the King to Vic, even if you wanted to. And then if you were waiting for this medical person to come over and make an assessment, you're burning 35, 40 seconds if that person's available just to get them there. And so what's happening is we have a Georgia House bill now that says that you cannot return to play or return to wrestle until you've been cleared by a medical person. So you have a lot of people that are now saying, no, get up, you're fine, and asking them a couple of questions and then trying to push them back out to the circle. And especially in football as well. We've had some instances with youth games where all of a sudden you have 2 hard-hitting teams. Next thing you know, there are 4 players left on each side because this kid's concussed and this one's probably concussed and this one might be concussed, but we're not sure.
Right.
And 5 kids are slow to get up.
It's getting messy, isn't it?
It's getting terrible.
Yeah. Let me come back to that. Yes, sir?
Well, that leads to another question I had. In the rule book, it states in wrestling that if you lose consciousness, you're not allowed to return to competition unless you've been cleared. Is there a difference between losing consciousness because of a concussion or because you lost the ability to breathe or your blood flow?
Well, of course there is.
So
However,
you're treated the same.
Well, unfortunately, how are you going to make that call in 30
Well, you can
seconds?
tell, I mean, pretty easily because the guy's in the front headlock, there's nothing happening.
Gotcha. So there was no impact, there was no trauma. Yeah, of course, okay? That's not the mechanism of injury for a concussion, okay? It takes an impulse to have a concussion.
Right, I got that.
Yeah.
But an official is going to probably, you guys all agree, you're probably going to say the guy can't compete any longer, regardless of how he lost consciousness.
Yes.
No, those
Well,
in
look,
some cases, you might like to have one that will think outside the box.
Well, let's take the anomalies out so we can get through the presentation.
well,
Discuss it.
yeah, I'm going to try to make sure we got plenty of time to chat, okay? So I think training of officials is going to be huge. I think we're going to see, to come back to yours, I think we'll see rule changes come within the next couple of years. Again, they're going to have to allow for the proper assessment for concussion. That can't be done in that amount of time. So guess what? You're going to see a rule change come along. Just like you're going to see in hockey and football and cheer and soccer. It's going to happen. Okay, so until then, man, what a tight spot to be in. Guys, I can't help but make the call from a standpoint of safety for that child. Okay, that's the only thing I know to do. All right, if you even suspect it, there's so much potential for loss with these kids, guys, particularly with repetitive concussion, all right? And we're gonna, I'm gonna hope to get to that and talk about it a little bit. But the potential is huge for the loss of quality of life, for the loss of function. And so I think we're gonna see with the more research that's done, the more concern we're gonna have about making basketballs on this. Well, I can only encourage you to make the best call you can for the long-term health of that student. Okay, that athlete. I hope that we've got better solutions to some of the great challenges you're throwing at, by the way. I hope that we've got better solutions in the near future. Okay, I'm going to continue on this with recognition, okay, because this is my big push. How do you know to pull them off? Repeating questions or statements, okay, over and over again, as though they had never asked it or said it before. Word binding challenges. They have the thought, but you can't get it off of your tongue. Tongue-tied, incorrect responses. They're giving you erroneous information or inappropriate comments, okay? You'll generally see some degree of problem with verbal communication. Eye movements, and this is one where we're going to spend a little time on, okay? Eye movements are almost always effective with concussion. I've seen very few. Now, some of it we have to be a little more detailed to pull it out, but I'm going to try to give you a couple of really quick ways to do a basic assessment. Now, again, I would include this in a concussion baseline class, going through basic eye movements, looking at 6 to 8 symptoms. We do that in our screening exam. I don't expect you to necessarily do that from a baseline standpoint, but if you see a difficulty, and particularly if that difficulty produces symptoms, so if I'm asking you to follow my finger, and I do this, and you go, whoa, 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 okay, that's not good, guys. That's without question evidence that you want to pull that kid out of the side. If I'm having you converge, right, and I can't bring the eyes together, or you don't even see the eyes come together, right? That's evidence, okay? So I want you guys to look at it. I have a feeling we'll find a couple of examples of some minor dysfunction that we can show you, some real life mistracking or some real life convergence issues. We'll take a look at those, okay? So here's what I want to do. We've got 2 different movements that I'm going to do. Let me show you them. We're going to stand up, find a partner, and I want you to check each other, okay? If you find something that you think is concerning, bring me over, let me look at it, and then we may all gather around it, okay? All right, the first one's going to be smooth pursuit. Now, again, we can check saccade, just a little more difficult. So I'm going to have you check smooth pursuit. I do this with basically an X pattern, okay? So I'm going to demonstrate on this gentleman, and then I'll show you on me. My instructions would be, and I prefer this to be standing, okay? Standing, it adds to the difficulty. I've got to attend to more than one thing at a time. No, you're fine. You just sit right there. But the pattern is this. I'm going to have you start with your finger basically out about 18 inches from them, but centered right at the bridge of the nose, okay? And I'm going to basically say, I want you to follow my finger with your eyes without moving your head. I'm going to give at a reasonable rate, roughly a second, okay? A second to a half on that movement, and then down to the other corner and back, okay? Now, I've already got an example that we can work with. Maybe here, did that bother you?
Yeah, we know where. Hold it out.
I'm not going to pick on you yet. I'm going to let your partner find that, okay? All right, so the first one we're going to do is we're going to have that athlete standing. I want you to lock your eyes onto my finger. You're going to do an X pattern roughly a little bit larger than their head, maybe up to 2 times that width. So in other words, I may do up to about a 16-inch movement in each direction, but it's not going to be any big giant movement, okay? So very reasonably, we're going to move at a reasonable pace, and we're going to look for the eye's ability to do a 1-to-1 ratio, guys. The eyes up to a 1 hertz movement, which would mean 1 cycle per second if we had a metronome going, should be able to attend to smooth pursuit. So that means I should see a 1-to-1 ratio. If this is my eye and this is my finger, they should be locked on. If I stop, start, it doesn't matter, okay? If we don't see that, we've got a problem.
Keep your head still.
Head still, the idea would be head's looking straight forward, moving the eyes to track that target, okay? Now, I'm going to have you basically partner up. I want you each to do this one and the next one, and then switch partner, okay? So the first one is smooth pursuit. The second one, even easier, is convergence. We're going to start the same starting point right out about 16, 18 inches from the center of the nose, and simply have the athlete follow that finger in toward the bridge of their nose. We're going to bring it in and and back out, you go about 4 to 6 inches from the bridge of the nose. Now, what should happen? We should see a very smooth movement of those eyes converging in and then back out as they're following that finger in and out. Okay? So if you look at my eyes, they're going to come all the way in until they cross. I can hold that, oh my gosh, probably for 30 seconds if I really want. I want to follow that back out. My concussed patient, guys, they won't be able to do that. Very rarely. Okay, so if you see it, it's a solid call, we've got a problem. All right. Grab me if you have a question. Find a partner. Find me some dysfunction, okay? Yes, hang on a second, guys. If we fail this, we've been around the rest of You can do this seated if you want. You don't have to stand right now, okay?
Question. How are you?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
We're looking at balance, we're looking at population, so much questions, some of the, basically everything except for the vision.
With ours, now, let's get to that rare anomaly where they're deaf. I mean, of course, we have to make the assumption.
You're still going to think.
Yeah.
So that's really going to be good. Here's what I would say. Okay? That's what now, the spur of the moment decision, you don't have enough time. You can make based on each of these kids individually. Say, look, communicate that with them so that you're not having to create your own story.
So that leads to my next question. What do you
something. Oh, come on. Do I have to go around myself? Okay, good. What do we got? What did you see? Okay. All right, this legal. All right. Lock your eyes on the finger. All right. Yeah, so there's absolutely zero convergence over here. One example we can take a look at. Post-concussive. Yes. Okay. Okay, and so it could be linked to that, it could be other things. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to cover one eye. I want you to follow my feet. So you're step track on that. Okay, good. So his eye has the ability. There's what we call a medial rectus muscle that brings that eye over to the middle. His eye has the ability to activate that medial rectus muscle because when I block one and have him follow, it can come all the way over to the other side as though I were crossed, right? Your convergence center is messed up. Okay, so there's a specific area in the brain, and this is the only time we allow eyes to move in an unyoked fashion, meaning they don't move in opposite, basically, directions relative to the eye socket with pursuit. The only, yeah, except for the freaks who can do that, who can make their eyes go out. Yeah, that's the only time that we have a natural mechanism that eyes aren't yoked in their movement is when we converge and they actually move together. So there's a specific area of the brain you're having some challenge with. Yes, sir.
What about vision problems? For instance, I have a son that's almost blind in one eye, and I'm all the time getting him to say, follow my finger, especially when he gets tired, and one eye will move and the other will start shaking.
Yes.
Slowly get over it.
Well, and he should be in a vision therapy program, there's no doubt. So you can do that at home, that's fine. It's basically doing that, finding the things he can't do, and coming up with an exercise plan for him to do it. I mean, that's vision therapy. So you're doing the right thing from that standpoint. Now, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get back to any other thing we saw here, but we did have a question, blind and deaf athletes, what do you do? Gosh, obviously you're not going to be doing this test on. We're going to be focusing on balance and communication and consciousness, as we talked about earlier.
So John.
Yes, let's see, John, what do you got?
Question, probably.
All right, track me here. Does that make you symptomatic? Following all the way. if you guys want to take a look at that, I mean, this is a reasonable example if you want to try to huddle around, or if you don't want to catch up with him and just, now, here's the problem. If 50 people come up to him and say, follow my finger, man, after about 3 people, he's going to be done, okay? So maybe gather around in some groups, but here's what you're going to see. Let me tell you what you're going to see to make this a little easier. You're going to see those eyes converge. They're going to come in every time you bring your finger, and then that right eye is going to start to fatigue, and you're going to notice the left eye's coming in, the right eye's barely moving.
Is that astigmatism? Is that astigmatism?
No, that is not. That is fatigue of that medial rectus muscle. So either it's not getting the proper fuel delivery to make that muscle activate, or it's not getting the proper nerve impulse to make it out. One or the other. So there's some dysfunction in that normal process. We're going to take a look?
Sure.
Yeah, why don't you get right in front of me?
Because everybody will get the video, so then we can...
Good, perfect. Face him right there. We appreciate you. All right.
Way to go,
So,
John.
and the more straight on you can get, the better, okay? Follow that finger again. There we go. And that is a convergence insufficiency. That right eye, you see it?
It didn't move at all.
Oh. So basically, it can do about 2 passes, it fatigues, and it just sits there. Okay? So a great example of a convergence insufficiency. We also see there's 2 things. You don't even know the terms, but we got an insufficiency which says that eye won't move in, and then we've got an exaphoria that watch for, because what that is, the eye will move in, and then one will drift out. It can't hold that contraction. Okay? So either of those, if you don't see those eyes have the ability to come in and lock that gaze, then we got a problem. Great example. Take a look at him, okay? All right. Do we have any other smooth pursuit? Did anyone have a challenge following a finger or get symptomatic with that? Okay, so let me just make sure again. These are solid signs if you can do it. Here's my suggestion. Now, the problem with it is this. I looked at hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes, literally, okay? And it gets really, really easy at that point. When you first start this, it can be a little bit of a challenge. Gather up your coaching staff and line your team up and look at some eye movements, okay? I mean, it'll take you 10 minutes to go through your team and just look at a couple of movements. You're going to start to get a feel for it. I would say if you really want to be on top of your safety call on the sideline, this is one of the best tools to use. You're not going to see it on the other things because it's too difficult to teach, particularly unless we have someone hands-on. So what we're looking for, just to recap that, is a 1-to-1 ratio. As my finger moves, my eye should be moving exactly along those lines. Don't make the mistake of crowding in. Be at least an arm's length away or 18 inches away so that we're not getting convergence as I'm trying to do smooth pursuit, right? So keep that finger out, 1-to-1 ratio following the finger, bring that finger in, and those eyes should uniformly come in and move back out. Okay? I would go 4 or 5 repetitions and make sure you don't see that kind of a fatigue threshold that we saw here. Yes, sir?
So in our line of work, when we're out there on the mat and we have a minute to,
Minute and a half, maybe?
minute and a half roughly, this will pretty much let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a solid call, as long as you're comfortable doing it. That's why I'm going to suggest, again, unfortunately, we don't have the time to sit down and do a real practical on this, or I would have lined it up, because I love doing this, all right? But again, I'm going to encourage you, get back to your team and look at some eyes. Just line them up and say, follow my finger, okay? Now, obviously, if you note dysfunction, you might want to note that in their chart if you've got individual files, so that goes along with baseline, right? Is that where you're going with that? Yes, absolutely. So note it if it's there, so you know this was there before this injury that you're concerned about. Okay. Now, again, guys, I'm not asking you to diagnose concussion. I'm asking you to do enough to have a concern that you pull a kid out for concussion diagnosis. Okay. All right, balance is our other one. This is going to be easier. We did a tough one first, okay? So the first one we want to do, balance is universally effective to some degree with concussion. We want to have them do 3 simple tests. The first is a tandem gait, or what we call a heel-to-toe walk. That means literally, and if you can see me here, I'm going to walk putting the heel of one foot onto the toe of the next and forward. So this is very similar to what we might see with a roadside sobriety test, okay? We're going to eventually look ahead, eyes open, just normal stance, and we don't necessarily have to have a line. I want to be able to do 10 to 15 steps that we're going to be able to keep our balance while we're walking heel to toe. Now, here's what you'll see in people that can't do this. Right? That's what you're going to see with them. Very big oscillations, okay, with most of them. Another one that we do, this is called Romberg test. This is a pretty simple test. All we're going to do is have them stand with their feet all the way together. Make sure those heels are touching. You don't have to do this. You can just have the arms at the side, but I prefer to bring this in just to offset with a little more weight up on the top. and we're simply going to close our eyes and balance, okay? I would expect you should be able to get 10 seconds out of your athletes without any major movement, okay? Now, technically, a positive finding on this is a fall, meaning I have to step or catch myself to fall. I don't want you to be concerned about that. If you got an athlete that can't stand here without, or reasonably still, if you're seeing movement at any degree along these lines, you're concerned, okay? Line your team up. Have them get in this position, all of it at the same time. Close their eyes and see if they can't give you 30 seconds reasonably steady that you can't see them moving if they don't have a concussion, okay? You'll be convinced that that's a solid test for you. Single leg stance, really good as well. All we're going to do is bring one foot up to the knee of the other. Now, again, I prefer to have this. We should do this eyes closed, all right? And I would want to get it at least 10 seconds that we can do eyes closed on a single leg stance, particularly young. Okay? So I'm pulling these back because the rule of thumb is 30 seconds on that. I'm going to be more conservative, saying, gosh, these kids are young, they're in shape, they're athletic. If they can't give you 10 seconds, we've got a problem. Okay? I don't care which foot. Again, these understand that if you do a good baseline test, you're going to already have this data beforehand. Because, for example, the SCAT is going to do single leg balancing tests for you. So that's going to be referenced and scored numerically for you so that you already have it. Okay, so these are really easy to do, guys. I can have somebody take 10 steps, right? I can have them line up with feet together, and I can have them do a single leg stance within 30 seconds. Solid tools here, okay? Practice them. Get a partner. I want to see if anyone can't stand there or do any of these don't do the heel to toe, that's too extensive. But I want you to stand up, try to balance, eyes closed, and I want you to try to do a single leg balance for me, okay? It should take 30 seconds.
Pretty sure single leg.
Yeah, and don't worry, if you're not capable of doing this, don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, there we go.
Make sure those heels are touching. No cheating.
I'm waiting for one of you to
Get together. 30 seconds.
You can certainly test yourself on this as well, but I like eyes on it.
Make it for my life.
So what's a reasonable degree
So a foot down is a failure for sure. Anything that, again, you should yeah, you're looking for that's right. Minor oscillations, you're looking for the fact that you really think they're going to have to touch.
Do you have the knee up on this? Is it knee up or foot out?
No, yeah, so you should bring your ankle technically to the knee, have a 45 degree turn. Yep. All right, any challenges? How'd you guys feel with that? All right, yes. Let's get us calm down just for a second again. They're still having fun. If you guys have margaritas at lunch, then you got to take that into account. Yes, sir.
So I felt like when I closed my eyes, I started to.
Yes. So look, let me explain this mechanism really quickly to you. In order for me to balance and oppose gravity and stay standing, I've got to have two of the three mechanisms that control balance and equilibrium. Okay? I've got my inner ear or my vestibular system, right, and that detects head motion. I've got proprioceptors. Proprioceptors are nerve endings that detect joint motion and muscle stretch. Okay? So if I start moving, I stretch the muscles in my ankles and my legs. That sends a message to my brain that says, hey, buddy, you're falling to the left. You better make a correction, and I come back. Okay? Then lastly, I've got vision. Okay? Vision, if we've got our eyes open and we can see, that's the predominant mechanism for blinding reflex. Okay? So we've got three mechanisms: vision, proprioception, and vestibular apparatus. If we have two of those three things going, we can balance. If we have one of the three things going, we can't. So what do we do to exploit that? We have them close their eyes, taking out one of the three. Now, if we've got a problem in the other two, we can't maintain balance. Okay? So I'm standing in Romberg, eyes open, not a problem, right? If we can't stand in this position with eyes open, we already have a problem. You wouldn't have them close their eyes. Okay? If I'm in this position with eyes open and I'm doing this, don't have them close their eyes. They've already failed. Okay? However, if I do this, now I'm good. I close the eyes. Now I'm dependent upon vestibular and proprioception. And if I've got a challenge in one of those two systems, I'm not going to be able to keep this position without difficulty. Okay? That's really what we're doing. So that's why we close the eyes. Now, again, a fail with eyes open isn't automatic. You should have already been at the doctor. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to make it more challenging for them so we can pick on the important aspects of it. Okay, let's, I'm sorry, any last minutes on balance testing? Yes, sir.
If you have a poor baseline testing, what can you do to improve it?
Therapy of whatever type. I mean, you know, if you're having balance problems, do balance therapy or vestibular therapy. If you're having vision problems, do vision therapy, okay? Look, guys, like you say, comorbidity, we've got to take that into account. What about physical injury, right? I mean, I'm a chiropractor. I tend to believe that athletes perform better, and we all do if we're moving like God meant for us to. What if we got an injury to the point in the low back, the back of the neck, that God can't stand, right, without this? We have to factor that kind of stuff in. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So, for the balance testing, if we work with, a lot of us here work with really small kids too, 3, 4 years old. Obviously, 3 and 4 year olds don't have as good a balance anyway, so would that testing be
No,
pointless?
you're going to have to, that's a really difficult age, guys.
Yeah, little guys get hit in the head, just tell them go, you're done.
I think, yeah, at that age, it's too difficult for you to do this assessment. They can't follow your instructions. You can't rely upon that. Now, the SCAT-3 has a child SCAT-3 version that's for 5 to 12 years old, but we have no tool that would be valid for assessing a child over 5 years old. Okay, that's going to be an individual practitioner's call on looking at all that stuff. So, yeah, that's going to be a tough one. Okay, and that just means you've got to be even more conservative if there's any chance at all that you're going to make that conservative. Okay. All right. So this is the symptom list from the Zurich consensus or from the SCAT-3, and these are the ones that you would go down and basically numerically score. Guys, that's a 22-point symptom list. I monitor 50 symptoms in my office with concussion, and in most concussion cases, if it's significant, they're almost all hot. Okay. Any of these that are present that should not be there from a baseline standpoint with that kid after a suspected concussion is another piece of evidence that you would use to sideline that child. Okay? If they have one of these symptoms and it wasn't there before they started this competition, you have to assume it is from that injury and you need to pull them out until it's clear. Okay? That list will be there for you, so I'm not going to go down through that. However, let me do point this out on this list. I think it's really, again, kids don't want to be concussed. They know what's going to happen if they're concussed at this point. So there's a lot of sandbagging, particularly on the back test. So in other words, kids will score purposefully worse on their baseline test, so it doesn't look so bad if they're concussed. They can play. Professionals do this as well. Okay, Peyton Manning last year basically kind of changed the world by admitting that he sandbagged his impact test. Okay, admitting he purposefully did bad on it so he wouldn't miss the play if he got concussed. Yeah, so it's easy to do. We're going to see that happen. Gosh, the common kid will probably have had a few concussions and no one's ever. Okay, this is really common. Mom and dad don't know, teachers don't know, coaches didn't catch it. It happens. The most common thing that we see when these kids present, because mom doesn't know what's wrong, they're thinking they're doing drugs, hanging out with the wrong people because they're failing their classes, they can't maintain their relationship, they're not communicating with mom and dad like they used to, and it's all post-concussive stuff. So I think it's important to understand that list and understand those changes that can come about with it, right? Because it looks a lot like other symptoms that can come along with other problems. So understanding that well, realizing that we don't want any of those. Okay, recovery, 7 to 10 days, we've already said it, but why wait for those 7 to 10 days to pass, okay? I think we can do important things. Rest is the cornerstone of concussion management, and that essentially says we shouldn't be doing anything that exacerbates symptoms, okay? So this is a little beyond, I'm not going to spend time on this because our focus is in recognition, not treatment. I just want you to know, if you get an athlete that's pulled out and concussion's diagnosed, we're going to have to go through this process. So rest is it. We should not do activities that exacerbate our symptoms, and that would be physical or cognitive activities. This comes down to essentially controlling sensory stimulation. Concussion changes brain chemistry, and it interferes with your ability to take in sensory data and process it. And that's why when we go to class and we sit underneath the lights and the noise and the visual stuff, we crash, and at the end of the day, these kids are wiped out. They're fully born with headache, they're fatigued, they're dysfunctional, they can't do homework, they can't communicate. That's what we look at with these kids, all right? So rest is a huge piece of that.
Question.
Yes?
The only question I have is this. Is it possible that a mild exercise, like at the level of walking in the park, stimulates blood flow might be salubrious in terms of increasing blood
Absolutely,
flow in the brain.
absolutely.
Help the process.
Yeah, so the question is some mild exercise good for this age? Yes, as long as we can do it without producing symptoms. Okay? So as soon as we can get that kid back to a physical activity, that's what we want to do it. But we can't compromise brain by pushing that into a symptomatic state. So as soon as we can get them to do it, and they don't get a headache or brain fog or nausea, then absolutely yes.
Another question.
Yes.
Rest includes video games.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, vision, sound, particularly vision, but yes, video games, texting, computer work, reading. It would be rare that I didn't pull one of these kids out of school for at least a couple weeks until we get symptoms to calm down. Because again, it does us no good to put you into an environment to maximize your symptom set every day, and that's exactly what happens. So 80% of them we're going to pull out. 80% of our adults we're going to pull out of work during that time as well. Okay, so again, nutrition, a big concern. Substrates is what we're concerned about. Do we have the ingredients that are required to make that healing machinery happen for the brain and the body from that standpoint? So we're concerned about glucose management. That means we're going to feed them all day long, lots of protein, lots of water, nutritional supplements. Fish oil and vitamin D, I think, are probably two of the biggest nutrients that we need to be concerned about with concussion. And as far as I'm concerned, all your kids need to be on those supplements before they get a concussion. There's been significant research that shows us it will prevent concussions if we're sufficiently nourished prior to that injury. Okay, it changes the outcome. Our brain has the ability to absorb that impact in a different way and recover from it.
Well, you said fish oil, what else?
Vitamin D3, just over-the-counter stuff, yeah. So I think those are, and FYI, those are the two most deficient nutrients in the United States.
So,
okay?
so what you're suggesting, or what the studies are saying, is that we should, kind of coerce our kids to say like, hey, take these on a daily basis, and it could reduce.
Yes, and not only that, I'll go beyond it. So in other words, the American diet is horrible, guys. You got to understand. It normally takes me 2 weeks of management with rest and nutritional changes to get these patients to the point that I can start to do work on it. They cannot tolerate it because they don't have the nutritional substrates to be able to process the stimulation that we're trying to provide for them. The average American diet sucks, okay? It's deadly. Seriously. So basically the paleo diet is essentially what we promote. It's lots of protein, random veggies, some fruit, nuts and seeds, water, and I think we're there. Okay, I mean, really, so my concern is this. I want an athlete's body to have everything it needs to function at 100%, but not one thing more. In an ideal world. So what that means is knocking down simple sugar intake, okay? Making sure that we've got a great protein to carb ratio, which means our protein should be high in these athletes. Making sure we're well hydrated, that we're eating frequently so we're not getting hypoglycemia. And then we've got that basic support level. Again, you're not going to get omega-3s, and you're not going to get vitamin D unless you're supplementing with them, or unless you're eating organ meat, which most Americans don't do, okay, as far as the vitamin D.
And
so I think, yeah.
And a lack of these things will encourage more concussion.
I think it predisposes you to injury. So we've got two kids. One's sufficiently nourished, and the other one is deficient. We get them the same impact. Which one is more likely to suffer consequences? And it's going to be the deficient child. Okay? I think it's clear from the research standpoint. And then we've talked about comorbidity. So yeah, we've got concussion, but we've got another 2 or 3 things that we got to deal with this child as well. And it always complicates the picture. It complicates your ability to make that concussion call to start with. So coaches, I think you simply have to know your players. Okay? That's a part of that baseline testing process. Damn it, if it's not required, just do it for fun. All right? Get a baseline testing. I don't care if it's just a key day. Get something, okay? Know your players. That's the only way that this is going to work. Guys, I'm out of time, and I've got a little bit to go. I think I've probably got 2 or 3 slides. Let me just quickly go on this, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Second impact syndrome we talked about. I want to talk to you about repetitive concussion, because it's a huge concern right now. And the real problem that we're having with repetitive concussion is chronic traumatic encephalopathy. You guys know Junior Seau, I'm sorry. We've got a number of other athletes that have died, and post-mortem they've been diagnosed with CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. This is basically a chronic neurodegenerative disease that's brought on from multiple neurons. Okay? So really similar to Alzheimer's disease, except we got a different protein. You know, we got beta amyloid proteins in Alzheimer's, and in CTE we've got tau protein. But it's essentially a very similar disorder. Okay, it will lead to massive personality and character changes and everything else. So we're very concerned about this because we've actually seen autopsies on 16-year-old athletes that have been able to find confidence in their position. Okay, so we're not talking about, you know, a 50-year-old who played 2 decades of pro ball. We're talking about a high school student. All right, and lastly, this is the return to play protocol that I use. This will be on your slides, okay? It's a little more extensive than what the Zurich consensus put out, just with some more details about it. But this is the protocol that I would require an athlete to complete without being symptomatic before they are cleared for a return to play. Okay? So let me make sure you understand the return to play protocol is that we can't start that protocol until we're asymptomatic at rest. Okay? So if I'm sitting here chilling, you know, I'm not doing physical or cognitive, I should not be symptomatic of headache, nausea, fatigue, any of that. I should be a normal presentation at rest. Once that's there, then we can start the return to play protocol. We start on level 1, work our way down to the bottom. If we become symptomatic at any of these steps, then we have to stop that progress, back up to the previous step, and try again after 24 hours to see if we can do it without symptoms. The goal is to complete this process, get you down to a full contact practice without symptoms, and at that point you're cleared for return to play. Okay? So that should be happening every time a child's pulled out and confirmed with a concussion. They really shouldn't be coming back in until that process is happening. Okay, I think I'm through with slides. I think that was my last one. And any last minute things I can clean up for you guys? Yes?
You keep talking about multiple concussions. Is there a point where if we have a kid that's had multiple concussions, you know, some of these kids we're seeing from 4 through high school, so it's 10, 12 years of it, that we need to just tell the kid, hey, you need to stop?
Well, I mean, this is going to wind up being a parental decision in that case. I think that if a parent is not already on that, and most of them are these days, then I think it needs to be a conversation to have. Okay? I see more and more that I'm getting kids in, for example, that are going to require a return to play protocol and a clearance, but the parent's not worried about it because they're not going back in. And the kid agrees, I'm not going back in. So I see this happening more and more. I don't necessarily, look, that's not where I want this to go. I want to see rule changes, awareness and education for officials, for coaches, for players, for moms and dads, so that we can have safe play and understand how to deal with these things, rather than not having kids play sports. I think there's a good happening. Yes, sir.
We didn't really talk about prevention.
Yes.
I wanted to know your opinion on the role of the mouthpiece.
Oh, good, thank you. Let me talk about mouthpieces and helmets, okay? So, to date, there hasn't been a research project that's proven that we can lessen the incidence of concussion with helmets or mouthpieces, okay? Now, why would that be? Because essentially what we're saying is that going to prevent, if I have a helmet on and I take a hit, is my brain still going to rattle inside of my skull? Probably so, okay? So, is it reasonable to think that we could build a helmet that can absorb some of that shock, similar to what new cars do when we're hit, that they crumple instead of delivering that impulse to the passenger? Yeah, of course it is. Matter of fact, we've got a company here in town that we're affiliated with, Concussion Mitigation Technologies, that they're building one of the new prototypes, and this is pretty cool. It's got sensors in it that detect rotary force, all different kinds. It's got mini airbags that deploy and then de-inflate based upon impact, both on the coup and the contra coup side of it. So we're really seeing some cool things come out. We will get there with it. It's just not there yet. It hasn't been proven. Now, my theory is, yes, anything that we can put on a child that will absorb the impact has the potential for helping. Again, I just can't tell you that we've proven that yet. But does it make common sense? I think so. Yes. Yes, sir.
So could you point us in a direction possibly? I trade an exercise physiologist, but I like the physiology side of it. I can't necessarily find great physiological information about what is taking place in a concussed individual.
Okay. Well, I can give you tons of data on that if you want, and I can certainly pass that along.
Yeah, just a link or something.
Yeah, so you're really wanting kind of the cascade of effects that happen physiologically, and I've got a beautiful article on that. So if somebody can remind me, I will get that to you. okay? And I'll be happy with that. Yeah, it's a beautiful, this goes through the sequence. It's a nice process that helps you really understand. If you understand that physiology to start with, you understand why they're having that dysfunction. For the most part, guys, what we're really looking at is changes in chemistry that change your ability to, again, take in sensory information through the autonomic nervous system is regulated. So it's really tough. But I'll get you there. Yes, sir.
In Washington, we have a thing called the lifestyle law. Have you heard of that before?
Say it again.
Lifestyle law.
No.
It was a boy who died.
Gotcha. Yes. And here it's known as the Jake Snakenberg Act. Yes.
Anyway, so any organization has to have a parent signature on a reference concussion recognition recovery management paper.
Yes.
In Washington for youth sports and high school sports. Is that in other states as well? Or?
You know what? Again, yes, it is. It's not universal. That's what we're going to see. Okay, we're going to see changes about awareness and making sure that parents are essentially signing off, saying, yes, I understand that my child may get a concussion or a sport.
Is that in the risk management, the assumption of risk in buying a card?
I don't know.
I know there's something in there that's, I've never read all of it.
But that's something that we'll take back to state services, and we'll see if that's something that we need to implement after this presentation. So we'll take a look. If there's some individual questions on specific things that you'd like to talk with Dr. Gulla,
please do.
I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. 3:45, I'd like to go ahead and start the next presentation. But if you have some time,
I will hang around. Thank you. And I apologize for running
No,
over
that's
that.
great. If right outside the door, between the next session, if you have some pressing issues that you'd like to talk with, maybe we could just hang out for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
Let's take 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you pass that over to
Yes.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome. Oh, I love
It's
it.
a small price to pay for.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
You know what? We didn't get a chance to. I wish It's a bottleneck. Thank you.
Absolutely. But it takes one device. I think the biggest thing we can do is and this is going to sound like I'm the difference. Okay? We can't always do that.
Yeah, that's great. I think that we tell them this is what it should be. You know, we have resources. Now it's just the financial aspect.
Okay. So
In off-season, that stuff that they were doing, like gym, football, or I don't know. So I looked into a lot of the information. Honestly, I can't find it.
Grass-fed, no antibiotic, no hormone. And don't get me wrong, that's what I prefer to see. We're looking at the difference between okay, and what do we do? I guess where I would go. The amino acids are so many. If it comes from a lower quality source, that's not what we know. You've got to get it essential. So that means if cheap, the only thing I have to know to do is get your aerogel do some sort of something. I mean, no, come up with a light. This is a shot. For these guys or something.
Is that something I should worry about when I get checked out?
You know, I'm not really sure on that. I know more about our physical therapy and other things with on the eyes so much, but it's all going to make sense. But I would love to know that. So let's ask.
The one with the ears you're saying? The 3 inputs you have, the visual,
Oh.
the signatory.
You don't see that.
Balance.
Because I have an issue with my ear all the time, so maybe that's why I would balance.
Well, that could be, yeah, that
God,
could
I can
be.
afford protein.
Usually,
And I've had a lot of concussions.
Usually when we practice that part,
Okay, don't do
see, and that's something I need to practice.
your brain around it.
And the sad thing is too, when you get older, like I've learned, and this is such a stupid, embarrassing thing, but I've learned how to grab something when I first wake up, I was still a little off, so I'll hold on to the dresser. So I'm making myself stop doing that, so I can balance this otherwise, because as I get older, I have to do that. I don't want to do that.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Best place to find you.
It sure is.
For physiology stuff.
Yeah, do that. Yeah, I'll do I'm going to leave these up here, guys. If you want my email, I'll just leave my cards up here, okay? So you can grab them.
And John has, I know John's going to present that. Do you want to ask him real quick about that? So he's got.
Should I worry about insufficiency?
I was going to talk to you about that a little bit. So we'll see. No, if that's the only, if you're functioning well, and that's the only thing. Oh, good, okay. Well, you're welcome to apply, and we'll take a more detailed look. If you want to do that, just do it, okay? And then that way I can advise you properly, rather than just on one thumb. Okay? Do it, yes. Come on.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Mike talked to you.
He sure did. Let's do this. Let me grab this and I'll get out of their way and let's go over this. I'm happy to get out of there with you.
So when did you move down?
Like 10 years ago. Oh, we gotta go.
I still crush you.
Is it on a document? Do you have a PDF or it's on a PowerPoint?
It is.
Just, I'm just gonna have you transfer it to my computer, because I've got mine working, and it's gonna take a long time because all the pieces.
Really?
So I'll just convert it to mine.
My videos were not.
Military just can't touch the rest of us to start using
My
that.
video links, files on other parts of my hard drive. It's okay. Professional videos.
If you can save it to this, I do have save it to the thumb drive, just put it in the USB.
That'll work.
I have it on a thumb drive.
There's got to be a medium around somewhere.
It's a good session.
Yeah, actually, I'm using a restricted castrated BC versus a nice apple. You're using a up-to-date, non-restricted, good PC versus good apple. They both work for their time.
I grew up, I know all the Easter eggs. I saw the first
I tried to throw this video on there for you, somebody needs to go out of my presentation, pull the video up.
Yeah, great.
But that's fine. It's a cool Navy video. Yeah.
I knew I'd turn you Army guys. John wrestled for me when I was coaching at Army. I used to wrestle all the guys and I'd try to go Navy rides and I'd be like, it's a Navy guy beating an Army guy with a Navy ride! Oh! I like to talk crap. That was yes.
Tomorrow I've got a flight. Is there, I didn't know because I can't leave, so I took a cab in. Is there?
Yeah, at the front desk, just talk to them at the front desk and let them know your departure time. They'll get you a shuttle.
Hey, wait, Mike, the thing with the Guardians of the Gods.
We will probably not be able to make that happen.
Okay.
The transportation issue has been difficult. We're having some issues even with that. So,
Mental skills training.
break down and take his girlfriend out there and play some.
that'll work.
There's no better place to explore. There's no better place to
Shop all inside, I do the tournament.
Navy SEALs for you.
I'll see you Friday on the line up, and I'll see you Sunday when it's up to
Gotta be right there, and then just the TV button at the bottom.
Yeah.
Start your presentation.
That'll
start you. Green button. Play whenever you're ready to start.
Wait, so this is at the end?
Oh, that's at the end? No, that's what it is. Yep, yep, we can just exhale, or I wouldn't exhale, just set it up. Presentation view, that's your escape key. For everybody who's leaving, just make sure you check out with me before you go so that I make sure I've got all your best contact info, whether or not you want your bronze certificate or your silver college credit. And then if for some reason paperwork got turned in late and you're not sure if you're going to have a ride back, just check with the folks here at the front desk and they'll make sure that the shuttle is set and ready to go to get you where you need to go. At the front desk here, I can't remember his name. I probably have some concussion symptoms and I don't actually remember either.
Is there still a 6 o'clock session?
There will probably not be a 6 a.m. Trip to the Garden of the Gods because we've had some transportation issues. We're trying to fix that tonight so we can still get to a coach's social. So if we get transportation, we'll be going to a nice place 20 minutes from here. If not, we're just going to walk across the street to a nice little dive bar and have a good time. And I'm not too worried about getting in knife fights because we've got a lot of tough fights out here.
For tonight, the after dinner session with
The coaches.
Is that?
Yeah, I'm going to do it. I'll do a session on that. We'll just do kind of an open forum. If there's anything out of the new bronze material you want to talk about, and, but I don't want to waste any more of John's time. I just want to introduce John a little bit. John wrestled for me at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. He's a West Point grad. He's a captain now in the Army, and has just finished his master's in sports psychology in February. Well, if I had to tell you, in 15 years of coaching college, that I had favorites, I would probably say that he'd be in this room. A little bit about John. John had an issue with a wrestle off that never should have happened. And was our starter as a junior and dealt with the adversity of that situation and then turned it around and said, I have to be able to rely on myself. I can't rely on a coach, I can't rely on an official. I'm going to take my life into my hands and my success in my hands. I'm going to come back in better shape, better nutrition, much more powerful, much more focused, much more ready to go. And he did that on his own. He didn't do that with the support of our coaching staff. He did it on his own because he was driven to reach the goals. To qualify for the NCAA tournament, he had to beat Troy Letters, the returning NCAA champ, just to go to NCAAs for third and fourth in the NCAA tournament. And he beat Troy Letters. And not only beat him to the point where Troy Letters, with about 20 seconds or 15 seconds left, could have gotten an escape to still push the match into overtime. And Troy just put his head down on the mat and quit. And let John finish the match out on top. And when you can break a returning national champ, in my book, that's what we're trying to teach our kids, is to have that kind of attitude. So I'm very honored now at USA Wrestling to have an opportunity to keep that relationship together and get a chance to know him and to share some of his experiences in sports psychology with you. Thank you very much for everything you do, and it's good to see you back.
Even if your one eye's still not moving on the test, it's good to have you here. Let me get this going so we